I've always believed that trust is the foundation of a marriage, a delicate thread woven through years of shared laughter, quiet nights, and promises whispered in the dark. For 15 years, Claire and I had built something I thought was unbreakable. We met in our early 20s, two dreamers in a small coastal town. Her with her wild auburn hair and a laugh that could pull you out of any storm. Me with my steady hands and a heart that beat for her alone. We weren't perfect, nobody is, but we were us, a unit, a team. Or so I thought. My name is Daniel Harper, and I'm a carpenter by trade, though I've dabbled in furniture design, crafting pieces that people in town would pay good money for. Claire was a schoolteacher, the kind who could make a room of rowdy kids hang on her every word. She had this way of making everyone feel seen, like they mattered. It was one of the things I loved most about her, her warmth, her ability to light up a space. Our life was simple but rich. A small house with a garden she tended obsessively, weekend hikes along the cliffs, and evenings spent with a bottle of wine and old vinyl records spinning on the turntable. We didn't have kids, not for lack of trying, but after a few years we'd settled into a rhythm that felt enough. Just us, our dog Rusty, and a life that seemed to hum along smoothly. But there were cracks I didn't see, hairline fractures in the foundation of our world. Looking back, I can pinpoint the moment things started to shift, though at the time I was blind to it. It was late summer, the air thick with the scent of salt and blooming jasmine. Claire had been working longer hours, something about a new curriculum and after-school programs. I didn't question it, why would I? She loved her job, and I was proud of her dedication. But there were small things I brushed off. Her phone, always face down now, buzzing at odd hours. The way she'd linger in the bathroom after a shower, texting someone with a faint smile I didn't recognize. The way her laughter felt just a little forced when we were together, like she was performing for an audience of one. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. I've always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, especially Claire. But doubt has a way of creeping in, doesn't it? It started with a receipt I found in her purse one evening while looking for her car keys. She'd asked me to grab them before we headed to a friend's barbecue, and there it was, tucked between her wallet and a pack of gum. A receipt for 2 glasses of wine and a charcuterie board at a restaurant I'd never heard of, dated for a Thursday evening when she told me she was at a staff meeting. I stood there, keys in hand, staring at the slip of paper like it was a riddle I couldn't solve. I didn't say anything, not then. I told myself it was nothing, a colleague maybe, a quick drink after work. But the seed was planted. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing more. The way she'd come home smelling faintly of a cologne that wasn't mine, sharp and expensive. Nothing like the cedar and pine scent of my workshop. The way she'd deflect when I asked about her day, her answers vague, her eyes darting away. I'd lie awake at night, her soft breathing beside me, and wonder if I was imagining it all. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband, the one who snoops through his wife's things. But the doubt grew, heavy and insistent, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. One evening, I did something I swore I'd never do. Claire was in the shower, her phone left on the kitchen counter, and before I could talk myself out of it, I picked it up. Her passcode was still our anniversary, 061209, the day we got married on a windy cliffside with the ocean roaring below. The screen lit up, and I opened her messages. There it was, a thread with a name I didn't recognize, Ethan. No last name, just Ethan, with a string of texts that made my stomach churn. Asterisk, missed you at the cafe today. Same time tomorrow. Asterisk. Asterisk. That dress you wore last week is still on my mind. Asterisk. Asterisk. Can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? Asterisk. I scrolled further, my hands shaking, my heart pounding so loud I thought she'd hear it from the bathroom. There were dozens of messages, weeks' worth, full of flirtation, intimacy, plans. A photo of her in a dress I didn't recognize, smiling at the camera with a look I hadn't seen in years. A message from him, describing a night they'd spent together at a hotel an hour's drive from our town. My knees buckled, and I had to grip the counter to keep from falling. The shower stopped, and I locked the phone, setting it back exactly where it had been. My mind was a storm, thoughts crashing into each other. but I forced myself to act normal when Claire emerged. Her hair damp, her skin flushed. She smiled at me, that same warm smile I'd fallen in love with, and I wanted to scream. Instead, I kissed her forehead and said I was heading to the workshop to finish a project. She didn't question it, didn't even look up from her book as I left. In the workshop, surrounded by the familiar scent of sawdust and varnish, I sat on a stool and tried to make sense of it. Ethan. Who was he? I didn't know anyone by that name, not in our circle of friends, not at her school. I thought about confronting her, demanding answers, but something held me back. Maybe it was fear of hearing the truth, fear of what it would mean for us. Or maybe it was something darker, a need to understand the full scope of her betrayal before I acted. I wasn't ready to lose her. Not yet. Not until I knew everything. The next morning, I started digging. I didn't have much to go on, just a first name and a vague sense of where they'd been meeting. I checked her phone again when she was asleep, memorizing the details. A cafe called the Blue Anchor, a hotel called the Seaside Inn. I searched online and found Ethan's last name, Donovan, on a faculty page for a nearby university. Ethan Donovan, a guest lecturer in the education department, mid-30s, with a smug smile in his profile picture that made my blood boil. He was handsome in a polished way, the kind of guy who wore tailored blazers and probably spent more on his haircut than I did on my truck's monthly payment. I started following Claire, discreetly at first. I'd take different routes to work, passing by the cafe where she'd meet him. I saw them once, sitting by the window, her hand resting on his arm, her laugh carrying through the glass. It was like watching a stranger wearing my wife's face. I didn't confront her. I wasn't ready. Instead, I kept watching, gathering pieces of their affair like a detective in a story I didn't want to be part of. I found out where Ethan lived, a sleek apartment in the city, an hour's drive from our quiet town. I learned his schedule, his habits, the way he'd linger outside the cafe, checking his phone, waiting for her. The betrayal wasn't just in the moments they stole together. It was in the lies she told me, the life she built behind my back. Every smile, every touch, every "I love you" felt tainted now, like a photograph with a scratch across it. I stopped sleeping, my nights spent in the workshop, sanding wood until my hands bled, trying to drown out the images in my head. I didn't know what to do with the anger, the hurt, the humiliation. I loved her. God help me, I still loved her. But I hated her too, for what she'd done, for what she was still doing. I started planning, though I didn't know what for. Revenge, maybe, or justice, something to make her feel the weight of what she'd broken. I thought about exposing her, telling our friends, her colleagues, her family. I thought about confronting Ethan, shattering that smug smile with my fist. But those felt too small, too fleeting. I wanted something that would last, something that would hurt her the way she'd hurt me. I didn't know what it would be yet, but I knew it would be precise, deliberate, like the cuts I made in my workshop, each one measured and final. By the time fall arrived, the air crisp and the leaves turning, I was a man divided. Part of me still wanted to save us, to confront her and demand answers, to rebuild what we'd lost. But another part, darker and colder, wanted to tear it all down. I kept up the facade at home, kissing her goodnight, making her coffee in the morning, all while watching her live a double life. She didn't suspect a thing, didn't notice the way my eyes lingered on her, searching for the woman I thought I knew. One night, as we sat on the couch, Rusty curled up between us. She reached for my hand and squeezed it. "You okay, Dan?" she asked, her voice soft, concerned. I looked at her, at the face I'd loved for half my life, and I almost told her everything. How I knew, how it was killing me. But instead, I smiled and said, "Just tired. Long day." She nodded, satisfied, and turned back to the TV. That was the moment I decided. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be forgiveness. It would be something else, something that would make her understand the depth of what she'd done. I didn't know what yet, but I knew it would be cruel, calculated, and unforgettable. The man I was before was gone, replaced by someone new, someone who understood that love could curdle into something sharp and unforgiving. And as I sat there, her hand still in mine, I started to carve out the first piece of my revenge. The days after that moment on the couch felt like living in a house of mirrors, every reflection distorted, every smile a lie. Claire went about her routine with the same effortless grace, tending her garden, grading papers, humming softly as she cooked dinner. But I saw her differently now, like a stranger wearing my wife's skin. Every gesture, every word, was a reminder of her betrayal, and the weight of it pressed against my chest, a constant ache that no amount of whiskey or late-night woodworking could dull. I was Daniel Harper, the man who built things, fixed things, made them whole. But this I couldn't fix. Not with love, not with words, not with time. So I turned to something else. A plan, meticulous and sharp, to make her feel the same pain she'd inflicted on me. I spent weeks gathering information, piecing together the puzzle of Claire and Ethan's affair like a craftsman, assembling a complex joint. I didn't just want to know what they were doing. I wanted to understand why, how, and what it meant to her. I needed to know the shape of her betrayal before I could carve out my response. I started by tracking their movements more closely. I'd borrowed a friend's car, a beat-up sedan that wouldn't draw attention, and parked near the Blue Anchor Cafe, watching them through the window. They were careless, unguarded, laughing over coffee like they were the only two people in the world. I saw the way she leaned toward him, her hand brushing his, the way her eyes lit up in a way they hadn't for me in years. It wasn't just intimacy. It was a connection, a spark, and that hurt more than anything. I followed Ethan home one evening, keeping my distance, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. His apartment was in a modern building in the city, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed money and ambition. I sat in the car across the street, watching him climb out of his sleek black Audi, his phone pressed to his ear, his laugh carrying across the parking lot. I hated him, not just for what he was doing with Claire, but for the life he represented, one I could never give her. I wasn't a lecturer with a fancy degree or a wardrobe of tailored suits. I was a man who worked with his hands, who smelled of sawdust and sweat, who thought love was enough. Clearly, it wasn't. I dug deeper. Using a burner phone I bought at a gas station, I created a fake social media profile to follow Ethan's public accounts. He posted about his lectures, his travels, his passion for education. I found photos of him at conferences, always surrounded by people, always smiling that smug smile. I cross-referenced his posts with Claire's schedule, piecing together when they'd started meeting. It had been going on for at least 6 months, maybe longer. There were trips she'd taken, weekend retreats with her colleagues, that now seemed like lies. I remembered her coming home from one, glowing, telling me how refreshing it was to connect with her team. I'd believed her, kissed her, told her I was glad she'd had fun. The memory made me sick. I started documenting everything. I kept a notebook in my workshop, hidden behind a stack of lumber, where I wrote down dates, times, places. I saved screenshots of their messages when I could get to her phone, printed them out, and tucked them into a locked drawer. I tracked their hotel stays, cross-referencing credit card statements I found in her desk. The Seaside Inn was a favorite, a boutique place with ocean views and discreet staff. I even drove there one night, walking the halls, imagining them behind one of those doors, laughing, touching, living a life that didn't include me. The thought was a knife, twisting deeper with every step. But knowledge wasn't enough. I needed a plan, something that would hit her where it hurt most. Not just her heart, but her pride, her sense of self. Claire was a woman who thrived on being admired, respected, loved. She was the teacher everyone adored, the friend everyone turned to, the wife everyone envied. I wanted to strip that away, to make her see herself the way I saw her now. Flawed, human, capable of cruelty. I wanted her to lose something she couldn't get back. The idea came to me one night in the workshop, as I sanded a walnut table I'd been working on for weeks. The wood was smooth under my hands, the grain revealing itself layer by layer, and I realized that revenge, like woodworking, required precision. It wasn't enough to lash out, to yell or fight or walk away. I needed something that would unfold slowly, deliberately, like a story she couldn't escape. I started thinking about her world, The people who looked up to her, the community she cherished. Her school, her colleagues, her students' parents. They all saw her as Claire Harper, the perfect teacher, the devoted wife. I wanted to shatter that illusion. I began by planting seeds, subtle at first. I knew her principal, Margaret, from school fundraisers we'd attended together. Margaret was a kind woman, but she was also a stickler for professionalism. I called her one afternoon, posing as a concerned parent, using a fake name and a prepaid phone. I mentioned hearing rumors about a teacher getting too close with a guest lecturer. Nothing concrete, just enough to make her curious. I could hear the unease in her voice as she thanked me for the call, promising to look into it. I didn't mention Claire or Ethan by name, but I knew Margaret would connect the dots. Small towns have long memories and sharp tongues. Next, I targeted Ethan's world. His university had a public faculty forum where people could post anonymously. I created a throwaway account and left a vague but pointed comment about unprofessional conduct involving a guest lecturer and a married teacher from a nearby school. I didn't expect it to go viral, but I knew it would circulate, whispering through the academic circles Ethan cared so much about. I wanted him to feel the pressure, to wonder who was watching, who knew. At home, I kept up the act. I cooked dinner, laughed at her stories, kissed her goodnight. But I was distant in ways she couldn't quite pinpoint. My touches brief, my smiles tight. She noticed, of course. She was too perceptive not to. But when she asked what was wrong, I'd shrug and say, "Just work stress." She'd nod, relieved, and go back to her phone, her secret life. I wondered if she ever felt guilty, if she ever looked at me and saw the man she was breaking. I doubted it. She was too caught up in Ethan, in the thrill of their stolen moments. The real plan, though, the one that would cut deepest, was still taking shape. I wanted something public, something that would expose her not just to me, but to everyone she cared about. I started thinking about her annual school gala, a big event where teachers, parents, and community members gathered to raise money for the arts program. Claire was always the star of the show, giving a speech, charming the crowd, basking in their admiration. This year, I decided that stage would be her undoing. I spent weeks preparing, working late in my workshop not on furniture, but on something else. A presentation, a digital collage of evidence. Screenshots of their texts, blurred just enough to avoid legal trouble but clear enough to tell the story. Receipts from their hotel stays. A grainy photo I'd taken of them at the cafe, her hand on his, their faces close. I used software I'd never touched before, learning to edit, to layer, to create something that would play on a loop, undeniable and devastating. I tested it on an old laptop, watching the images flicker across the screen, each one a blow to the life we'd built. I contacted the gala's tech coordinator, a young guy named Tim who'd bought a dining table from me last year. I told him I wanted to surprise Claire with a tribute video, a celebration of her years at the school. He was thrilled, eager to help, and gave me access to the projector system. I felt a pang of guilt for using him, but it was fleeting. This wasn't about Tim or me or even Ethan. It was about Claire, about making her face what she'd done. As the gala approached, I fine-tuned the plan. I'd wait until her speech, when every eye was on her, when she was at her most radiant. The video would play, and the room would see her for what she was. I imagined the silence, the whispers, the way her face would crumple as her world collapsed. I didn't want to destroy her completely, just enough to make her feel the weight of her choices, to lose the pedestal she'd built for herself. But there was a part of me, small and nagging, that hesitated. I still loved her, even now. I'd catch her in quiet moments, watering her roses, reading to Rusty, laughing at a bad joke, and I'd wonder if I could forgive her, if we could start over. But then I'd see her phone light up with his name, or I'd find another receipt, another lie, and the anger would surge back, cold and unyielding. The night before the gala, I sat in my workshop, the laptop glowing with the final version of the video. It was perfect, a blade honed to a razor's edge. I watched it one last time, my heart pounding, my hands steady. Tomorrow, Claire would stand in the spotlight, and I would pull it away, leaving her exposed, alone, and broken. I didn't know what would come after. Divorce? reconciliation, or something else entirely. But I knew one thing. She would never forget this, and neither would I. The night of the gala arrived with a crisp autumn chill, the kind that makes your breath catch and your skin prickle. The community center was transformed, strung with fairy lights, tables draped in white linen, and the air humming with chatter and clinking glasses. I stood in the back, a glass of untouched wine in my hand, watching Claire glide through the crowd. She wore a deep green dress that hugged her curves, her auburn hair swept up, a few curls framing her face. She was radiant, the center of every conversation, her laughter bright and effortless. To everyone else, she was Claire Harper, the beloved teacher, the heart of the community. To me, she was a stranger, a woman who'd built a life behind my back, and tonight, that life would come crashing down. I spent the day finalizing everything. The laptop with the video was hooked up to the projector, tucked away in the tech booth where Tim, the coordinator, had given me access. I tested it twice that morning, watching the images flicker across the screen. The damning texts, the receipts, the photo of her and Ethan at the cafe. I'd added a final touch, a slow, mournful piano track that would play behind the visuals, amplifying the weight of her betrayal. It was cruel, yes, but it was precise, like a chisel splitting wood along the grain. I wanted her to feel every second of it, to know what it was like to have your world exposed. The evening moved slowly, each moment stretching as I waited for her speech. I mingled, forcing smiles, shaking hands, nodding at stories about Claire's impact on the school. Parents gushed about how she'd inspired their kids. Colleagues praised her dedication. And I stood there, the dutiful husband, agreeing with every word while my stomach churned. I caught Margaret, the principal, watching me once or twice, her eyes lingering a little too long. I wondered if my anonymous call had stirred something, if she was starting to see the cracks in Claire's perfect facade. I hoped so. It would make what came next even sweeter. Claire took the stage at 9, the room quieting as she stepped into the spotlight. She began her speech, her voice warm and steady, thanking everyone for their support, weaving stories about her students with that effortless charm. I slipped out, moving to the tech booth, my heart pounding but my hands steady. Tim was there, chatting with another volunteer, and I gave him a nod, telling him I was ready to play the tribute video. He grinned, oblivious, and handed me the controls. I waited, my finger hovering over the play button, as Claire's speech built to its climax, her words about community and trust ringing hollow in my ears. And finally, she said, her smile radiant, I want to thank my husband, Daniel, for always being my rock, my partner in everything. The crowd turned to me, clapping, and I forced a smile, raising my glass. That was my cue. I hit play. The screen behind her flickered, and the room fell silent. The first image appeared, a screenshot of her text to Ethan. Asterisk, can't wait to see you tonight. Miss you. Asterisk, a murmur rippled through the crowd, low at first, like a distant wave. Claire froze, her smile faltering as she turned to the screen. Another image followed, a receipt from the Seaside Inn, the date and time stamped clearly. Then the photo, grainy but unmistakable, of her and Ethan at the cafe, her hand on his, their faces close. The piano track swelled, mournful and heavy, underscoring each image as it cycled through, one after another, a relentless parade of her betrayal. The room erupted into whispers, gasps, a few stifled laughs. Claire's face drained of color, her eyes wide, darting from the screen to the crowd to me. I stood in the booth, watching her, my expression blank but my heart racing. She stammered, trying to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Margaret stepped forward, her face a mask of shock and disapproval, and whispered something to Claire, who nodded, dazed, and stepped off the stage. The video looped, and I let it run, let every person in that room see the truth about the woman they'd idolized. People were staring now, some at the screen, some at Claire, some at me. I saw pity in their eyes, anger, confusion. A few parents ushered their kids toward the exit, as if the truth was too ugly for them to witness. Claire stood frozen by the side of the stage, her hands trembling, her eyes locked on the floor. I felt a surge of satisfaction, sharp and cold, but it was laced with something else. Grief, maybe, for the life we'd lost, for the man I used to be. I left the booth, slipping out the back door before anyone could stop me. The night air hit me like a slap, and I leaned against the wall, breathing hard. I'd done it. I'd exposed her, stripped away the mask she'd worn so well. But the victory felt hollow, like a table I'd spent months building only to find it warped. I drove home, leaving Claire to face the fallout alone. I didn't know what she'd do, try to explain, deny it, run to Ethan, but I didn't care. Not tonight. By the time I got home, Rusty was waiting by the door, his tail wagging, oblivious to the storm I'd unleashed. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in the dark, the house quiet except for the creak of the floorboards and Rusty's soft snores. My phone buzzed. Claire, calling, texting, begging me to talk. I ignored it, letting the messages pile up. I didn't want her apologies, her tears, her excuses. I wanted her to sit with what she'd done, to feel the weight of it the way I had for months. The next morning, the town was buzzing. I didn't need to check social media to know the video had spread, whispered about in coffee shops, shared in group chats. Claire didn't come home that night, and I didn't expect her to. I heard from a friend that she'd gone to her sister's place, an hour away, probably to escape the stares, the questions. Margaret called me, her voice tight, saying Claire had taken a leave of absence, effective immediately. "I'm so sorry, Daniel," she said, and I could hear the pity in her voice. I thanked her and hung up, not wanting to hear it. I thought that would be the end of it, that the video, the public humiliation, would be enough. But as the days passed, I realized it wasn't. The anger was still there, simmering, and so was the hurt. I started hearing rumors. Ethan had left town. His university contract quietly terminated after the faculty forum post gained traction. Claire was staying with her sister, avoiding everyone, her reputation in tatters. Part of me was satisfied, but another part wanted more. Not just to hurt her, but to make sure she could never rebuild what she'd lost. I started planning again, something smaller but sharper. I contacted a lawyer, not for divorce, not yet, but to explore my options. I wanted to protect what was mine. The house, the savings, the life we'd built. I sold her car, the one she'd used to drive to her secret meetings, claiming it was a joint decision to downsize. I donated her prized garden tools to a community center, telling them she'd wanted to give back. Each act was a cut, deliberate and deep, stripping away pieces of her world. But the final piece of my revenge came a month later, when I heard she was trying to return to teaching, applying for jobs in another town. I knew she'd always dreamed of opening her own tutoring center, a place where she could teach on her terms. So I acted. I used the last of our joint savings, money she didn't know I'd moved to a separate account, to buy a small storefront in the next town over. I set it up as a tutoring center under a fake name and spread the word that it was hiring. When Claire applied, desperate for a fresh start, I made sure her application was rejected, citing concerns about professionalism. It was petty, yes, but it was also poetic. She'd never know it was me, but she'd feel the sting of that door closing. Months later, I heard she'd moved across the state, working a desk job, far from the classroom she loved. Ethan was gone, their affair a footnote in her ruined reputation. I stayed in our house, surrounded by the ghosts of our life together, and started rebuilding, piece by piece. I didn't forgive her. I don't think I ever will. But I let go of the anger, let it burn out like a fire that's consumed all its fuel. Looking back, I wonder if I went too far. The video, the rumors, the tutoring center, they were cruel, calculated, a craftsman's work. But they were also honest, a mirror held up to her lies. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm not sorry either. Claire broke something in me, and I broke something in her. Maybe that's what love becomes when it's betrayed. A ledger of pain, balanced in the end.